Hey friends, how you doing there? Welcome back. Excuse me. Welcome. Excuse me. All right. Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem Tes, Daf 49 of Masechet Ksubis, friends. Well, yesterday we kind of got like halfway through the Amud already of Mem Tes Amud Aleph, so that's exciting stuff. So a little bit less to do today. And we start with the new Mishnah about the father being chayiv b'mizonis of his daughter and his son also. The Gemara is going to discuss about. So that's kind of what we talk about, and then we get to like some Yerusha stuff kind of later. Okay, so says the Mishnah about halfway through Mem Tes Amud Aleph, ha'av einu chayiv b'mizonis bito. So a father is not obligated in the mizonis to paying the for the food of his daughter. Zemedrash Darish Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah lefnei chacham b'cherem b'yavne, and this Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah taught before the rabbis in Kerem b'yavne. Kerem b'yavne is basically the Beis Hamedrash in Yavne. That it's called the Kerem b'yavne because it was set up like a vineyard, that there were rows of benches. But it's the Beis Hamedrash in Yavne. It says Rashi, B'yom sheminu nasi. Friends, you remember once upon a time, a very long time ago, oh my gosh, 2.5 years ago already. That's crazy. We learned Masechta Brachos, and there was a whole story about when they replaced Rabbi Gamliel with Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah to be Rosh Yeshiva. So on that day, he taught this halacha, Habonim Yirshu v'Habonu Sizonu, that the sons inherit the father and the daughters get sustenance. Now Rashi says that what does it mean that the sons inherit the father? It's talking about Ksubas b'nin dichrin. We're going to get to it a little bit later. If I understand correctly, Ksubas b'nin dichrin is that basically if you have a fellow, you have Reuven, he's married to Sarah and Rivka. So let's say Sarah brings into the marriage $100, and Rivka brings with her $900. So now the father's net worth, now the husband, Reuven's net worth, let's say, is now $1,000. Now the thing is, Rivka, who's bringing in $900 into the marriage, she's concerned because she's going to have sons, and Sarah is going to have sons, or let's just say one son each, right? So you have Yaakov. Yaakov is married to Sarah and Rivka. He's going to have 2 kids, Reuven and Shimon. Sarah is going to give birth to Reuven. Rivka is going to give birth to Shimon. Sounds like Yevamos over here. Just we don't really need to get into this. But basically, I think the point is that Rivka is concerned that if Yaakov dies, so then Reuven and Shimon, his kids, are going to divide up the estate equally, which isn't necessarily fair because Rivka brought in 9 times with her as much as Sarah did. So why should Sarah's son Reuven inherit just as much as her son Shimon? So therefore, there's a stipulation in Ksubas b'nin dichrin that he says, don't worry, when I die, Reuven won't have access to the stuff that you brought in, right? That your stuff will go to your sons. I think that's it. But we're gonna get to the sugya in a few days. So now, anyways, so it says Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that the sons have this Ksubas b'nin dichrin, and the daughters their sustenance is written in the Ksuba as well, right? That he'll support the daughters either until they get married or until they become bogerises. And just like the sons inherit their Ksubas b'nin dichrin after the father passes away. And so also when we talk about the mizonis of the daughters, so that is relevant after he dies. But while he's alive, he doesn't have to pay for her mizonis. Now says the Gemara, mizonis bito hu de'eno chayiv, that he's not chayiv to pay for his daughter's mizonis. Ha b'mizonis beno chayiv. But we want to say, so he's not chayiv to pay for his daughter's mizonis, but he is chayiv, he's obligated to pay for his son's mizonis. Uvito nami chovo deleko mitzvah. But even for his daughter, He's not obligated to pay for his daughter's food, but it's encouraged. So we see, based on this interpretation of the Mishnah, a fellow is encouraged to support his daughters and obligated to support his sons. Now, Mani Masnisin. So who is the author of that Mishnah? Which Tana says that a fellow is obligated to pay for the food of his sons and encouraged to pay for the food of his daughters? Lo Reb Meir, lo Reb Yehuda, velo Reb Yochanan ben Broka. It's like neither Reb Meir nor Reb Yehuda nor Reb Yochanan ben Broka. The Tana is learning a mitzvah lazun es abonis, that it's encouraged to sustain the daughters. And certainly, if it's encouraged to sustain the daughters, it's then encouraged also to sustain the sons because they are studying Torah. Divrei Meir, that's Reb Meir's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda, mitzvah lazun es abonim, that it's encouraged to sustain the sons, v'kavachomer lebanos, and then certainly it's encouraged to sustain the daughters. Mishum zilusa, because if you don't sustain them and they're forced to beg for food, that wouldn't be very nice for the daughters. So therefore, so says Rabbi Yehuda that a fellow is encouraged to sustain his sons, and certainly is encouraged to sustain his daughters. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, Omer says Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, chova lasun es abonis na'achar misasavim. It's an obligation to sustain the daughters after their father dies. But as long as the father is alive, einon nizonin, that the son, neither the sons nor the daughters are. He's not even encouraged to support either one of them. Right? He doesn't have to. He's not even encouraged. He's not discouraged, but he's not encouraged either. So Mani Masnisin. So who's the author of our Mishnah? Our Mishnah says he's obligated to support his sons and encouraged to support his daughters, but that doesn't seem like Reb Meir, Reb Yehuda, or Reb Yochanan ben Broka. Reb Meir, because if it's Reb Meir, ha'amar bonim mitzvah. Reb Meir says that just like it's encouraged to sustain the daughters, it's also encouraged to sustain the sons. It's not an obligation though. Reb Yehuda, if it's Reb Yehuda, ha'amar nami bonim mitzvah, right? He also says, like Reb Meir, that it's encouraged to support the sons, but not obligated. Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, and if it's Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, afilu mitzvah nami leka. Well, there's not even any encouragement per se for neither the sons nor the daughters. So we haven't yet found an opinion that would be like our Mishnah. Ibai same Reb Meir, Ibai same Reb Yehuda, Ibai same Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. To which the Gemara says, actually, you can explain our Mishnah like any of those three, like Reb Meir, like Reb Yehuda, like Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. Let's start with Reb Meir. Ibai same Reb Meir. I can say that the Mishnah is Reb Meir b'hachikam. This is how you have to understand the Mishnah. Ha'ab eino chayav b'mzonis bito. A fellow is not obligated to support his daughter, but he is encouraged. V'hu adin livno, and it's the same thing for his son. Ha-mitzvah b'bito ika. But it is what did I just say? Right? So there's no obligation for his daughter nor for his son. But it is encouraged to support his daughter. And and then certainly to the sons who are studying Torah, he's also encouraged to support them. By the Katani Bito, the reason why he mentioned the daughter, Hakamash Malan, it's teaching us the afilu bito chovahu deleka, that even his daughter, that even about the afilu bito chovahu deleka ha mitzvah ika. What it's saying is that even for the daughter, though, who's not necessarily studying Torah, but while it might not be an obligation, it is still encouraged to support her. If you want to say Rabbi Yehuda, that the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda, this is what it's saying. A fellow is not obligated to pay for the mizonos of his daughter. V'chol shekain livno, and certainly he is not obligated to pay for the sustenance of his son. Ha mitzvah bivno ika, but it nonetheless is encouraged to support his son. And then certainly if it's encouraged to support his son, it will be encouraged to support his daughters, so that they don't have to go around begging. But the Katani Bito, the reason why it mentions his daughter is a kamash melon. It's letting us know that afilu bito chova leka, that even his daughter, who certainly he should be supporting, such he doesn't have to go around begging. He's not obligated to support her, but it is encouraged. By saying Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, or I could say it's Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka v'achi ka'amar, and this is what it's saying: Eno chayev b'mizonas bito v'u'adin livno, that there is no obligation to support his daughter nor to support his son. V'u'adin da afilu mitzvah nami leka, and it's not even encouraged either. Ve'aydi de bonis lachar misas avin chova, but since there is an obligation to support his daughters once he dies, Tana Nami Enu Chayiv, so he also mentioned that, but that while he's alive, there's no obligation, but it means there's no obligation, he's not even encouraged either necessarily. Omer Be'ila says, so we explain how the Mishnah can be like either Reb Meir or Reb Yehuda or Reb Yochanan ben Broka. Omer Be'ila says, Reb Be'ila, Omer Rish Lakish, says the name of Rish Lakish, Mishum Reb Yossi bar Chanina, and the name of Reb Yossi bar Chanina, Be'usha is Skinu, they established in Usha. There's a contemporary Jewish music band called Zusha. This is Usha. Maybe we should make a Babylon Talmud band and we'll call it Usha. Who would be in it? Who would be in the Babylon Talmud band? We could probably put something together. The Maisa, I probably won't be involved, because I don't know. Committing to band practice right now is not something that I want to add to my schedule. But okay, Babylon Talmud band could be called Usha. Let's go weiter. So Be'usha Eskinu. So they made a thing in Usha. Shei Adam Zones Bonav Benosav, that a fellow should sustain his sons and his daughters. Kishen Ketanim, when they are young. Okay, well, there you have it. In Usha they said when the sons and daughters are young, he should support them. They asked the kasha, is that the halacha? Does he really need to support his sons and daughters? So Tashma, so listen to this. Also the comment of Yehuda, if they would come to Rav Yehuda and ask, say like, hey, I got these little kids, do I need to support them? Armalu, you would say to them, look, Yairod Yalda, a jackal gives birth, and then ignores them and says, go fend for yourselves. That's what a jackal does. Are you a jackal? When they would come before Rav Chizda, he would say to them, Kfu lei asisa b'tzibura, go turn over a mortar in public, and then stand on a velekum and stand on a velema and say, Orva boi bone, va'u gavra lo boi bone. That even a raven cares about his kids, and this fellow is not interested in his own kids. Orva boi bone, is he really interested in his kids? Vaksib, but the pasuk says, Livnei oriv asher yukro, to the children of the raven that they call out, because they're being ignored. So lokasha, it's no problem. It depends. When their mom is just born and they're white, so the raven, doesn't recognize them or something. So they're ignored and they have to call out for food. But once they become black, then the raven recognizes them and feeds them. Okay? Also the comment of Rave, if somebody would come to Rave, Amrulay, he would say to the fellow, Nichalach de mitzene bonech mitzdake. What, do you want your kids to have to be fed from public charity funds? Okay, fine. So we see nobody was able to say nobody went so far as to say you must support your children, but they would kind of try to discourage them and make them feel like a real shmendrik. But now that's also, if he's not wealthy. If the fellow's wealthy and for whatever reason he doesn't want to support his kids, we force him against his will to support his kids. That Rav is forced Rav Nosson Bar Ami va'apik mini dalmei zuze litzdake, and forced him to give 400 zuz for tzedakah. Right? So I guess when it comes to tzedakah, if a fellow can afford it, so then right, if you can't afford it, so then Whereas if he's wealthy, so then we can kind of force him to pay. So we see that just like Rav forced Rav Nosson Bar Ami to give tzedakah, so also we're basically saying to the guy, like, forget about if your kids or not. If you're a wealthy guy, then just treat it like tzedakah, and you have to support your kids. Now, okay, here's an interesting little bit. Omer Reb Illa, says Reb Illa, Omer Rish Lakish, in the name of Rish Lakish. But Usha Eskinu, they made a thing in Usha. HaKosev kol nechasav levanov uveishto nizon nemeim. That if a fellow writes all of his possessions to his children, him and his wife can still chaparain from it. So you have a fellow and his wife, and he maybe it's some kind of tax loophole, who knows? But he writes all of his property to his children. So now technically his children own it and not him, so he doesn't have any rights to it. But they made a takana in Usha that if a fellow does this, he still has a right to chaparain stuff. Maskef Reb Zer. Now Reb Zer is unimpressed. V'teim Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani. Some says Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani. Gedol mizo amru. This isn't that big of a chiddush. They said an even bigger chiddush. What's the even bigger chiddush? Almanoso nizonis min chasav. That even his widow would be able to get sustained from his property. So do we even have to ask about him and his wife? Let's go by this. What are we talking about? So the Shalach Ravin be'igri say that Ravin sent mishemes, that if you have a fellow who dies, okay, and he left a widow and a daughter. So you have Ruvain dies, and he's married to Sarah, and they have a daughter Rivka, okay? So Ruvain dies, and then he leaves a widow and a daughter. So who inherits Ruvain? His daughter, Rivka. Right? Sarah, his wife, will get her Ksubis, and then the rest of his property goes to Rivka, who inherits him. So Sarah, the widow, will be sustained by the inheritance that the daughter Rivka has. Nises, but now what happens? Right, Nises Abbas. What happens if Rivka now gets married? So Rivka is married to, Shimon. Rivka is now married to Shimon. So the thing is, when she's married, so this inheritance that she has from her father Ruvain is Nichsei Malug. Which means that they belong to her, but her husband Shimon can eat the fruits. And because he can eat the fruits, he's considered like a lokeach, like as if somebody who purchased the property. He's considered like it's somebody who's purchased the property. So you have this property, right, that belongs to her, it's nichsei malug, but it's considered like it was sold to her husband Shimon because he's able to eat the fruits. Now here's the thing. This property is a property that had a lien on it, right? Because it was used to that's the widow Sarah was able to eat, right, being sustained from that property. So Rivka wouldn't be able to sell it to anybody else. But if she does, so then Sarah would no longer be able to eat from that property. If she would sell it. But in this case, we're saying that even though Rivka got married, and now her husband Shimon has the rights to eat the fruits, and he's considered like a buyer of the field, Midar Abanan. It still belongs to Rivka, but because he has rights to eat it, he's considered like a buyer in some sense. So Sarah, the widow, should no longer be able to collect her, mizonis from that field anymore if Shimon is considered like the buyer of it. But nonetheless, almanoso nizonis min chasav, still Sarah, the widow, is able to be sustained from this property, even though it's considered like Shimon purchased it. Mesa habas, and now if Rivka dies, and now Shimon inherits Rivka, i.e. he inherited this field, it's now his. Mamish, Rivka's dead. Amr Yehuda ben Achosel Reb Yossi bar Chanina al Yodi Oya Maisa. There's a story, like an incident that's like this that happened. But when they said Almanos and Nizonis Minuchosov, that Sarah can continue to be sustained from this property. So what just happened? Reuven was married to Sarah, and they had a daughter, Rivka. So they were married, and everything was hunky-dory, and they were all being sustained from this estate. Fine. Reuven now dies. His daughter Rivka inherits him. Sarah, the widow, can continue being sustained from this property. Rivka then gets married to Shimon, and now, even though he's considered like a lokeach by the nechasim, by the nichsei melug, still Rivka, Sarah can continue eating from this property. And then, even if Rivka dies and Shimon inherits his widow Rivka, now the property belongs to Shimon, and still Rivka can continue eating from that property, even though Reuven is dead, Rivka is dead, and the property now belongs to Rivka's husband, Shimon. Still, Sarah can continue eating from it. So, hu ve'ishto mibaya? Then obviously in a situation where Reuven is still alive, Sarah is still alive, he writes off his property to his children, he can continue to eat it. I mean, even when Reuven dies and now it goes to somebody else's possession entirely, we said that Sarah can continue eating from that property. When Reuven is still alive, certainly he should be able to continue eating from this property that he wrote to his kids. To which the Gemara says it's actually not so obvious, because I might argue that when Reuven is dead, so the reason why Sarah is able to eat from his property even once the daughter Rivka dies and now the property belongs to her husband Shimon, she could still eat from the property because who else is going to support her? Whereas over here I might think that as long as the husband is still alive, if he wrote away his property to his children, so then let him get a job and make some money and support him and his wife that way. So it isn't so obvious that he would be able to continue eating from that property. So therefore it has to teach us in Usha, they taught us in Usha that if a husband and wife write their property to their children, they can nonetheless continue eating from that property. So is that the halacha? That if a fellow writes all of his property to his children, can continue eating from the property? Tashmad Reb Chanina Reb Yonasan Havukaime, that Chanina and Reb Yonasan were together. Also, Ugavra Gochin V'Nashke Reb Yonasan Akari, and came a certain fellow and kissed Reb Yonasan on his feet. Reb Chanina, my eye. Chanina says to Reb Yonasan, what's the deal? Why is this guy kissing your feet? So Amalis Reb Yonasan says, I'll tell you, Kosev Nechosov, Livon Hava. This fellow wrote all of his property to his children. Vasi Sinu Lizane, and I forced his children to sustain him from this property. Now, Yomer Pishtoma Lavdina. So if we're saying that the halacha, that it's not a halacha that the children have to allow the father to be sustained from the property that he gave to them, Mishumachi Asisinu Asayinu. That's why he had to force them, because it wasn't the halacha, but he had to force them. Eliyomar Dina Asayinu Bai. But if you're saying that the halacha is that if a father gives his property to his children when he's still alive, if the halacha is that they still have to let him, chaparain from it, well then what's the big chiddush that he didn't exactly save the day? He was just saying what the halacha is. Rather, it must be that it isn't actually halacha that they have to let him be sustained from the property. So therefore, Rabbi Yonasan said, nonetheless, let your father eat from the property, and that's why the guy was so happy that Rabbi Yonasan sort of forced the kids to let him eat from the property, that he went and kissed his feet. Friends, that was Daf Mem Tes of Masechet Ksubis. We learned a new Mishnah that it says that there's no obligation for a fellow to sustain his daughter. And then we had three opinions. We had the opinion of Reb Yehuda and Reb Meir, which are really this, at the end of the day, they are net the same, which is that even though there's no obligation for one to support his sons and daughters, it is certainly encouraged. There's the opinion of Reb Yochanan ben Broka, who says that as long as the father is alive, it's not even necessarily specifically encouraged. If he wants to, he can, but it isn't necessarily, you don't have to encourage it in any way. And then at the end, we learned of this halacha that if a husband and wife kind of write over their possessions to their kids, in Usha they said that the husband and the wife could still continue to eat from that property. And it seems like that might not necessarily be the halacha per se, but we did see that Rabbi Yonason did enforce it nonetheless. Friends, that was Daf Mem Tes of Masechet Ksubis. Hope you enjoy. Peace out.